Edgar Allan Poe, Messages from Beyond the Grave, Secret Passages, and Family Secrets. What could be better? Jacaranda Street, gravestone image of Botanic Hill Detectives Mystery has it all. And today we're lucky enough to get to chat with the award-winning author Sherrill Joseph in Blackbird Writers Presents Author Interviews. Welcome, Sherrill.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good to see you, Sharon.
Good to see you. It's so much fun to have you here. I absurdly love these books. I'm not the target market at all. I have only one child and she's 27. But I love reading these so much. So I'm just thrilled to have you here today. And you do write middle grade mysteries. And I'd like to know the difference between middle grade and middle school.
Okay.
Why did you choose this age group?
Middle grade refers to grades 3 through 6, roughly ages 9 to 12. Okay. Middle school is grades 6 to 8. So middle school gets more into the teenage years. So my books are written for what we call tweens. You know, the tweens, the preteen tweens. Yeah. So that's where that comes from. And I chose this age group because I taught for 35 years. I retired 10 years ago from San Diego Unified School District. And most of the time I got to teach 4th and 5th grade. I did teach every grade K-12 in my 35 years. I moved around on purpose just to keep things interesting and for challenges that way. But I love 4th and 5th graders. They just go to my heart. And my last 10 years of teaching, I was fortunate enough, because of team teaching, to be able to teach 4th and 5th grade. So when I retired, that's the age I knew I wanted to write for.
Neat. That's wonderful. And for this particular book is a lot of references to Edgar Allan Poe, who, when I was that age, that middle grade age, I loved Poe, read all the Poe I could get my hands on. So I was so excited to get my hands on this one. I know you love Poe. Tell the world why Poe is so awesome and why you chose to integrate him into this mystery.
I just didn't discover Poe, sadly, until I was in college. I don't know why no one taught Poe up until that time, but I was an English major, and you have to take American Lit, a comparative Lit, a smattering of Lit. And I had this fabulous professor, and I mentioned his name in the back of the book in my acknowledgments. And he taught many weeks on Poe. And he introduced me to this idea about Poe called the outre, which is a French word that means other or kind of bizarre, strange, kind of out there. And Poe wrote to the outre, which means he was trying to escape the real world because he was so lonely and depressed due to a number of people in his sphere dying, and especially the women in his life, his wife, his mother or foster mother, etc., and a number of friends. And so he kind of got obsessed with death, and he feared death in a way. But on the other hand, he thought that maybe with death, you could approach the afterlife. So he wrote to reach the outre, that bizarre, otherworldly place, and thinking that he could use it to come to terms with his current life. So I never knew that about Poe. And then I started reading more about Poe in reference to these books that I write, because I want to bring into every one of my mysteries what I call a twist of history. I want to bring in something that might be obscure, but also amazing. And Poe fits both those categories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I wanted kids, in case they were like me and weren't introduced to Poe early on, I wanted them to meet Poe. And I also wanted them to understand Poe, that he wasn't this horrible monster that a lot of people think that they think that you only trot Poe out for Halloween. He's not just somebody you trot out for Halloween. He's a great writer, as you and I both know.
Yeah, I love Poe. So when your four detectives are on a case,
yes,
and they have the full support of their parents, it's not like they're sneaking around behind anybody's back. Right. They have a private tutor, so they can really focus on being on the case, but still not let their education lag. Mm-hmm. So as a teacher of 35 years, mm-hmm. do you think this would be effective? I know my daughter always wanted, she's like, why don't I just have a private tutor? Then I can tour the world. I'm like, oh,
well, that happened for some kids during the pandemic.
Yeah, I know.
For better or for worse, but I didn't write. I started writing these books before the pandemic, so that wasn't on my mind. But yeah, it was a bit of a toss up for me because there is homeschooling mm-hmm. and private tutors, and then there's private school, and there's public education, and I advocate for public education. It's the backbone of our country, of our democracy. But I also had to free the kids up. Yeah. To be able to go places on these mysteries. And I didn't want them to just solve mysteries during the summer or during a vacation. Right. I wanted them to be able to solve it any time of the year. Now, Moki and Ronnie go to Las Palmitas Middle School when they're not on a case. But when they're on a case, they join the twins, Lanny and Lexi. They joined the twins, and they have the tutor, Bruce Wilding. Now, I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that Bruce was well qualified to teach. So he is, as I mentioned in every book, I think, he's a certified, credentialed teacher, and he used to teach at a public school. But the Wyatt family gave him an offer he couldn't refuse, which was basically adventure. Come with us on all these adventures, because the twins' parents are kind of famous. They're the dad is an archaeologist, the mom's an art historian, and they're very well known around the world. They go around the world speaking. So they hired this tutor initially so that they could take the kids with them, mm-hmm. and the kids wouldn't lose their learning, their book learning, as they call it. Because there's plenty of learning elsewhere, when you're traveling. So that's where Bruce came from. So Bruce, because he was a school teacher in a brick and mortar building before, mm-hmm. he knows the ropes. He knows what to do. He knows the standards. He knows he has to go to the schools, to the kids, the other two kids' teachers, and get the lessons. But he also augments the lessons with his own activities that usually have something to do with the mystery the kids are working on, and tries to make it that learning fun and rich for the kids. And it is. Yeah. It's like I always learn something when I read your books, which is thank you. Which is awesome. Well, I'm once a teacher, always a teacher. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to take that part out of me. I come from a long line of teachers, and no, you don't. And I'll still call even my stepdad was my high school biology teacher. I will still call him and say, I saw this plant, and it looked like this, and this, and then he'll give me a lecture on that. And he's 90. You can't just give a simple answer. No. Must teach. Yeah. Must teach. You got a teaching moment. Our teaching hour. Yes. All right. So I know you have a little history in the back of the books, which I also really, really enjoy. But for our readers and fans, before they get to the end and get to read that history, I'd just like to kind of talk about some of the mystery that's involved here. So is Leonore Kirby based on anyone historical? And then as a follow-up to that, is the Kirby home, the one the detectives get to explore, is that a real life Victorian house in Southern California? Well, the house, I didn't model it after any particular, I'll start with your second question, work backwards. I didn't model the house in the book after any particular Victorian home here in Southern California. However, here in San Diego, we have a number of these Queen Anne Victorians. And a friend of mine actually grew up in one, and I got to go in at one time. That might have stuck in my mind. But the house in the story is about 10 miles outside of town, and it's kind of a bit more of a rural forested area. So I just love old houses. I think I mentioned that in my author's biography in the back, that I think that that in a former life I was an architect because ever since I was a little kid, I've always keyed in on houses and how houses are made and what the windows are. And if it was a 2-story or more house, I wanted to go in and explore it. I wanted to go up those stairs and like, what's up there? What's up in those rooms up above? Because I lived in a 1-story house and I just was fascinated by 2-story homes. So I think all those things came together, to influence that. And then what was your first question?
I was born in Southern California, and we lived in a 2-story California Craftsman. And there were more windows on the outside than the inside. And it took my mom like a year of living there when she finally just went outside and counted, and then went inside and counted, and somebody had built a closet over one of those. But yeah, it's just, secrets. It's like, well, now I want to tear that wall out and see what they have back there.
And you might find a secret passage in some of those old homes, you never know. But I did remember the first question. The first question you asked me was about Lenore Valentine Kirby. I stress the word Valentine because I got the idea for Lenore, not only because, Poe liked the name Lenore, his long lost love, Lenore, he was always talking about.
Angels name Lenore, name us forevermore.
Yeah. But his foster mother's maiden name was Valentine. Her name was Frances Valentine Allen. And so I found that out when I was researching. And so I decided I was going to take the name Lenore and the name Valentine and create this character who is the fictitious foster cousin of Edgar Allan Poe. So that's where she came from.
Yeah, it's just a delightful mystery. So one of the things I love about your books is that I always learn something, which I've said a couple times already. For example, I did not know that a group of ravens was called an unkindness. Crows was a murder, but I had not heard that one. And that's kind of unkind because ravens are awesome.
They are.
But for your readers, what fun tidbits, other than that Edgar Allan Poe is totally awesome, what fun tidbits do you want them to take away from this?
Well, I don't know how fun this is, but I guess the detectives try to make teamwork fun. I always want my readers, my kids, to think about teamwork, that you can get a lot more done if you team up with your friends. And so that's one thing. Lanny loves old movies, as do I. And I really promote kids looking at those old movies, especially the special effects in those old movies, because we wouldn't have the movies we have today, we wouldn't have the special effects we have today without those movies that came before and those artists who came before, like Ray Harryhausen, who did the stop motion animation in those old Hercules and those Jason Argonauts movies with those skeletons who were fighting, and that kind of thing. So I want kids to know where things today came from. And so those are the kind of tidbits I want kids to take away from this story. The big one I want them to take away from this particular book, my book that just came out, is that Edgar Allan Poe, as I said earlier, was not this monster who skulked around cemeteries by night. And that idea was propagated by this man, Rufus Griswold, who was his enemy, who wrote this scathing obituary after Poe died. And all that is mentioned in the book. that changed people's thinking to this very day about who Edgar Allan Poe was or is. So I'm trying to undo that. I'm trying to get readers to see that, walk with Poe, befriend him, get to know who he really was. And I think if you read this book, you will come away feeling that.
Also Rufus Griswold. It's just the best villain name ever, and it's
isn't it? Rufus Wilmot Griswold.
Yeah, totally excellent villain name.
Yeah, isn't it?
Okay, so for the gravestone image, the titular gravestone image, you chose an anagram for the mysterious letters on Lenore's grave. And why did you do anagram instead of, say, a Caesar shift or a cryptogram?
Like right there.
Oh, perfect. We can see it. Yeah, and yeah,
there are two sets of letters here. And I thought an anagram, anagrams, of course, are the answers you get from unscrambling the letters. I decided to go the anagram route because I just thought it would be easier. You don't really need anything, whereas with like a cryptogram, you don't. I think you need like a number or something. You need to know like, you need to know like what that equals. Like that letter equals this number. And that's not what this is about. These are letters that equal words. And then a Caesar shift, you have to
write out the entire alphabet.
Yeah, you have to know like how to stretch it out or something. And I thought that's all that, those are going to be too difficult for kids. So I wanted to make it easy. And so I mentioned here, like, well, if it's that easy, which it really wasn't easy, they had some work to do to figure it out. But I thought, if they have to sit down and figure it out, kids can do that too. They can sit down and probably unscramble. It's kind of like another reason I thought it was because of the current day Wordles. Yeah, it's kind of like that, So I thought people are kind of more in tune with maybe Wordles than they are with cryptograms or Caesar shifts nowadays. Anyway.
Well, and you've mentioned this. It's like, well, kids can stop and solve it themselves. Kids and adults, by the way.
So, and adults.
You actually include all right, if you want to figure this out yourself, stop right now and figure it out. And in the old Ellery Queen TV stories or series, he used to do that. He'd stop and he'd look at the camera, break that fourth wall and say, I know how he did it. Can you figure it out? And then it'd go to commercial break. And I love that you include this little higher.
There's a challenge there. I don't know if you can, that shows up.
Challenge number 5 for detectives. Yeah. So you just stop reading here and figure it out before you go on, or don't. It's up to you. I love this. So what inspired you to include these?
Well, I thought that they would make the book more mysterious, like, okay, let's pause and try to figure this out ourselves. But then the real reason, the first reason that came into my head was because I was a teacher. And I wanted to give kids a challenge. And I thought, why didn't I do that in my other 4 books? So I think I'm going to continue doing that in upcoming books. Because I think it gets you more involved in the book. If you can stop and take it, it means you're taking it seriously. And you want to try it yourself and see what you can come up with. It endears you, I think, to the detectives. So it makes you realize what they're going through to try to solve this. It makes them real. It also helps put the reader into the book. So those are the reasons I did that.
Well, it was a great addition. I loved them. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate that.
So finally, what is next for you and your detectives?
Well, the next is book 6, and it's going to be called, at least right now, I'm turning to the page where I wrote about it. I always put it in the end of the book. I have a little dear reader, and at the bottom I have what's coming up, book 6. And book 6 is going to be called Upas Street, shocking specter. And the kids are going to travel 100 miles northeast of their town out to a forested area, kind of mountainous forested area, to a Welsh settlement. It was a town or a village that was settled in 1900 by the Welsh. And there are a lot of legends that are still floating around, kind of urban legends that are still floating around this village or town to this day. And in this village, kind of up on the hill, of course, is a castle that this very wealthy Welsh family, the Llewellyn family, built. And the Llewellyn family descendants still live in it to this day. And what's all this mean? Well, I love the old Universal horror pictures. You know, the Frankenstein, the Boris Karloff Frankenstein, and, you know, the Dracula and the Bela Lugosi movies and the Lon Chaney Jr. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to have, this castle is based on Talbot Castle in The Wolfman. I don't know if you know that movie.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
okay. That's one of my favorite Universal horror pictures. It was made in 1941. And Lon Chaney Jr., I thought he was just a really great actor. Not only did he do The Wolfman, that was his baby, as he called it. He was very proud of that. But he also played Dracula, and he also played Frankenstein's monster. And he was the only one of those three that did that. His father, of course, was Lon Chaney Sr., who was very famous in the silent movies. Mm-hmm. And Lon Chaney Jr. sort of came to acting accidentally because his father didn't want him to be that. And he went off and he did all kinds of other odd jobs. But when his father passed away, he decided to go into acting. And his name was Creighton Lon Chaney. He dropped the Creighton part and became Lon Chaney Jr. to sort of capitalize on his dad's fame. But he was, yeah, and he made a movie the year before he made The Wolfman. He made a movie called it just slipped my mind. Man-Made Monster. And in this movie, he's somebody who can withstand electrical shocks. And so this one mad scientist starts this idea, well, let's give him more shocks and see if we can build up this electricity in the system. So he ends up glowing in the dark in this movie. And that's where Universal decided they're going to put this guy into more movies. And so that's where the Wolfman came after that. So anyway, I'm going to put a character in this book that glows in the dark.
That's awesome.
And that's where it came from. So it's a mashup of sort of the Wolfman, the castle from the Wolfman movie, and then the glow-in-the-dark man who Moki's going to call light bulb head guy or something like that. Moki always likes to come up with interesting names for these characters. So that's where that came from. So that's sort of what's coming up in the book.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, I feel like Lanny is a kindred spirit to me because he loves old movies and
yeah,
big words.
Same here. Mm-hmm.
Also, I find that after I finish one of your books, I say wowzers a lot.
Yeah, wowzers.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I do too. Thanks, Lexi.
Such a great word, wowzers.
We're going to thank Lexi. I know I do that too, wowzers. I used to just say wow, now it's wowzers.
Wowzers. It's so much more fun.
Yes.
All right. So finally, tell us where our fans can find you.
You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, also known as X, Pinterest, and you can find me on my website, which is sherrilljoseph.com. And in the books section of on my website, you can find links to every bookstore, including indie bookstores, where you can purchase my book. All my books, and this is number 5. They're standalone books, by the way. You do not have to read them in order, unless you're a purist that way.
I didn't read. I think I started on 3, and Yeah, I didn't read
Yeah.
them in order, and they're
Yeah.
all just standalone and charming. All right, well, thank you so much, and thank you, fans, for watching Blackbird Writers Presents Author Interviews.